All right. Welcome, everyone, to another session of BizzTalk Africa, where we discuss important issues in Africa, and we bring on wonderful, wonderful guests. And really excited today to have our guest, which is Shadrack and Pretty Kubyane, who are here representing Coronet Blockchain. And we have a really cool discussion here today on building Africa on the blockchain. I'm Jason Schuster, our host, representing BizTech, and my wonderful co-host, Vidya Mike from Questa Solutions, also a partner at BizTech. And we are really excited for today's session. Shadrack and Pretty are doing really, really cool things in Africa. And could you both just take a few minutes to tell us about yourselves, tell us a little bit about your company, and then let's dive into some topics for about a half an hour. Sound good?
All good, thank you. I'll allow you to go first. Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jason. My name is Pretty. My early times and experience in business started from a family business. So I was born from a very small village. Every second family was in business. The other one migrated to the bigger city, Johannesburg, for mining labors. So business was almost like the common thing from where we were coming from. It was almost like the way of life. So that's how even our family was into that kind of a business. So even though it was also in business, we also had a huge social responsibilities that we have to uplift other communities. So from there, after I finished my studies, I started working with other corporate social investments, where corporate invest in community responsibilities, and they will send a representative to look after the fund. So I was sent in a number of organizations to look after the project that has been funded by corporate. And then from there, that's when I started working with Shadrack on a management consulting firm, where we worked on access to market and taking new product and product lines to more markets and welcoming new companies to set them up within Africa. That's how we segued our way into blockchain, but I think Shadrack is going to say more on that.
Thank you kindly. Thank you so much, Jason. I am much appreciated for having us on board. Really, we're excited and we appreciate the hospitality. Look, before I lean forward to just add one or two things about myself, there's two elements that she very conveniently and modestly left out of her introduction. The one is that her dad was a big fan of the Land Rover vehicle. So where one of those businesses was actually wood cutting and wood trading. So her dad was forever the pioneer and innovator. Her dad would take her on that Land Rover on a daily basis, and they'll climb mountains almost like a daily Dakar race, to just kind of like bring back the best wood to distribute it across the village prison. So that's one thing. She's been in extreme sport for them from the age of 6. So that's just her sports and business.
Fantastic.
I love it.
So the second thing she left out is that not so long ago, as the Kingdom of Lesotho, which is enclosed inside South Africa, as the mining industries were now awakening like a giant, she actually had the privilege to be the referee between the Lesotho communities and the AIM-listed London, mining firms. One of them was actually extracting 30 billion rands out of the ground, and she kind of like put herself in between there. In the process of protecting the community, she came up with what became a policy framework for the entire country of Lesotho for the beneficiation. So she's got business and community interest for Africa at heart. So that's why it's great to be with her at the office. She's our voice of reason.
You Google. That's fantastic.
Thank you kindly. And on my side, look, I was born at the intersection of 3 provinces in South Africa. In the United States, they call them states, but in South Africa, it's provinces. I was born at the intersection of 3 of those. So I often say I'm a born diplomat, because from a very young age, I had to commandeer very diplomatic setups in a highly enriched social and cultural cosmopolitan. So from a young age, it was a normal thing to actually, by the way, there used to be countries before there were provinces. South Africa was amalgamated. Why that is significant is that without, unbeknown to me, I would wake up in the morning as a little hunter, because we lived off the ground. I would hunt in another country, come back for breakfast, and then I would actually go and fetch dinner by harvesting the millet fields in another country, because that's just how spatially exciting it was. So it stands me well now, because from my journey in corporate with entities like Deloitte, and now segueing into emerging markets with growth and strategy in Africa, and that's how we segued into blockchain for development or for social good. I have had to help the team to navigate some really culturally exciting but challenging dynamics. So they needed a born diplomat, and sometimes they need the blockchain leader. So it's great to be here with Coronet that focuses on provenance, meaning track and trace of origin of goods from source to consumer. Somewhere in between there, things get lost in translation in terms of who benefits and what are the core interests. So my last but not least point is that she often makes an example to say the majority of the 33 million smallholder farmers in Africa, they get refused entry into the Oscars of the supply chain, whereby they're not allowed to bring their goods to market. They're not allowed to really display their goods on the sought-after shelves. So that's why we do what we do. Apart from trekking here, we are leaning forward to trek food to ensure that the play field is leveled so that everyone can have equal opportunity, which is what she's really passionate about. And she's contagiously gotten us passionate about that.
The two of you are brilliant ambassadors. Honestly, for this cause, you're brilliant ambassadors. I'm going to have so much fun on this BizzTalk today. It's so much fun.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Well, perfect. Well, let's get let's go ahead and get started. I'm really excited. Your background is so cool. So you mentioned that the inequalities are in Africa are one of the big things that are close to your heart, Pretty, and that's something that you're tackling. So what besides your obvious inequalities and things like wealth or opportunities, what are some other inequalities that you feel that can be tackled through innovation and blockchain? What are your thoughts?
Thank you so much for that. So how we approach inequalities is there's a group of people, there's opportunities, there's rewards, there's income, there's development, and how is that distributed is in an unequal way, not because of criteria, but because of how things are set up. For example, we will use supply chains today because we work a lot in supply chains. When you look at the farmers, for example, just on the opportunity side, opportunity all access side, when you look at them, the biggest thing that could happen for a farmer like that, the Oscars, as Shadrack has mentioned, is to have your produce be on the mainstream shelf, is to have your produce be on a commercial catering, that's your hotels, eventing, is to have your produce sold for government contracts, for all these government programs, for feeding schemes, school feedings, and all of that. And 80% of the small farmers cannot access that because because of their production is not commercialized, lack of tools and all those kind of things. So when it comes to access, which is the second thing that leads to financial inclusion. So now when you're running that kind of a business that you don't have long-term contracts, your cash flow is always hand to mouth because you only sell today, and the terms that you get because you are on yourself this side and others are on their self that side, and you've got fresh produce that you are under pressure to sell it today, and you are not selling it to the end person who's going to sell it to the consumer. You're actually selling it to the middleman, so they always find themselves being held in a corner. So before I hand over to Shadrack to touch on the other point, on the last point. So you find that with all these things happen, one, transparency of where products are coming from us as a consumer. One of the things that is also within production, mines that we drink in South Africa, especially on the southern tip, you find that people that work there, those are not just producers, but people that work there, they are paid with a bottle of wine. And as a consumer, firstly, I would like to know, am I drinking an ethical wine? Because it's not the liquid inside the bottle, it's an industry, and multi-million industries. There's an environment, there's people's jobs, there's labor practices, and then there's quality of what I'm consuming. So for the consumer standpoint, that transparency, a blockchain that it brings, we bought an item this week, and I was telling Shadrack, you see these claims that I hear, I can say, let's go back to the shop now and say, let them prove it, that this thing is organic. Like, it will take them months, if they even listen to us, to say, but these claims that you make about the quality of this product, where do they come from? But with blockchain, we could have just take our phone, use our QR code, and we'll find out all that information, all those claims. We can find out all the history of the things that came within that on the consumer end. But the participants within the supply chain that are the engine of the economy itself, the engine of the food security, when you see the amount of income that end up in their pockets, the sustainability of their businesses, and you benchmark it with the only 10% of the commercial farming that have been in the industry, and then created these big barriers to entry. A technology like blockchain, it switches on the lights and get us asking questions.
But in addition to that, sorry, before you take on Shadrack, you sort of raised some phenomenal points, right? And I have thought about these things, or heard about it, or read about it, but not together, like what you just did. It's not only that supply chain visibility you're going to get, and Jason didn't say, but I talk a lot, right? So I'm going to try and keep it down a bit.
All you, Vinny, just take it off with it.
So you have that end-to-end supply chain. But here's the interesting thing, and what I heard, right? From that inefficient manner in how it works, you have wastage that possibly happening that shouldn't happen. There's people who need those produce that can't get it, so you have hunger on another side. You have unfair pricing. You have people who are controlling certain aspects, are obviously they're monopolizing money and their profitability. So the inherent transparency that blockchain give is not that end-to-end tracking alone to sort of see if it was from an ethical perspective, but the level of data that you are going to acquire in order to be able to sort of control and impact consumption, and how you could start to move things around. Because one of the key things you said there is the consumables go bad after a time. And if things aren't used today or tomorrow, then you don't know. But if you look at it from a blockchain perspective, right? If you could track that something is going to be ready in 5 days time, 10 days time, then you could forward sell some of those things. So you actually have a real good opportunity here for a more visible commodities market, right? To be able to trade in a sustainable, ethical manner, but have the transparency where, I think like where everybody wins. That is the only way that a society and economy could flourish. It has to be,
absolutely,
fairly driven.
Definitely.
So
those are incredible points you're making. It brings to mind a certain book that Preeti and I are big fans of. It's a biography by one of the what do you call it, the business leaders locally. His name is Bonang Mohale. He wrote a book that he called Lift as You Rise, meaning by leaning forward to deploy these see-through supply chain efficiencies through blockchain. You're quite correct. The amount of wastage on the one extreme, along with the amount of lack on the other extreme, just to put some numbers to your statement, in Africa, the 33 million smallholder farmers versus the 6 million medium to large commercial farmers. those 33 million farmers, that's where the bulk of the produce comes from, but that's where the bulk of wastage is sitting. And let me give you some numbers.
I like this. This is really good, because in addition to that, what you have done there, right, by analyzing it with those numbers, there's lots of companies and people thinking, oh, let's do projects in Africa and stuff like that. Let's bring a new thing. But actually, what you're doing is you're actually trying to resolve and fix what's broken now before you build upon it. And that's very fascinating. That's a great approach.
No, that is brilliant. If you look at the numbers, and I can see that wastage is one of those points that you singled out, and that's brilliant. A typical smallholder farmer in Africa, they lose roughly about 25 to 30% of their produce at the harvest point as it comes out of the ground, thanks to climate change patterns that whereby the farmer is holding on to outdated methods because data or knowledge has not been democratized. Thanks to a whole lot of uncertainties, lack of access to fertilizers, and all these barriers to really seeing a healthy produce. So 25% gone. Another 20 to 25% is lost in transit, thanks to a lack of refrigeration, lack of preservation methods, packaging, and also maybe even lack of getting access to transport on time. Once that produce comes out of the ground, the produce doesn't wait for you to raise funds to kind of like get it to market. So up to 50% of produce is lost. In contrast to the leg, how is the leg doing? Between 2016, 2017, around there, Africa imported up to $45 billion worth of food. And that is almost 80% of our food demand being brought in from outside.
Which
so
you probably had and has gone to waste.
It's gone down the drain.
So you lose twice. Money leaving the country.
It's a double whammy. It's a double whammy. As far as pandemic proofing and future proofing is involved, we cannot have a scenario where this losses being incurred remains the normal. Neither can we allow foreign economies to keep Africa on on a life support. They say, no, don't worry. Give us the best produce. Send it out to foreign destinations. We will bring foreign aid to you just to keep you alive long enough to kind of like churn food into our supply chain. We shouldn't depend on aid. We need more trade. And that's why blockchain, switching on the floodlight, as you referred to, we can now democratize knowledge to data, whether at a macro level, your presidents, your lawmakers, or at a micro level, on a simple, silly looking phone, to know when to plant, when to harvest, and to know when to access the most efficient, cost-effective transport means to market without having to deal with or be body tackled on the ground by all these brokers that have monopolized the trade zones.
This is one of the most fundamental things with blockchain, right? You have that transparency, but that peer-to-peer arrangement where the little farmer could sell his produce directly to a group of I don't know, like a restaurant. They sit in restaurants that would be proud to say, you know what, Farmer Joe is producing all our stuff, and we know he picked this on Friday and it's on your table on Saturday morning. And I think those sort of stories and being able to sort of harness that energy is fantastic. But then all the brokers in between, you start to take the middleman out, because farmers, if they don't make a little bit more, they cannot invest in some of the things you said, which is basically better farming methods, packaging, and transportation. So the system, the ecosystem will never improve unless we sort of reprioritize and redistribute how things are being done. That's a brilliant point.
That is fantastic, and you know what? My closing item on that incredible discussion is that Preeti and I'm convinced that we are among the last generation in Africa to live under a bartering trade mechanism, because we grew up in the villages. She grew up on the eastern part of the country. I grew up in the north of South Africa. So we knew who was the tailor in the village, who is going to put a good stitch on clothing. We knew who actually planted and sold tomatoes. We knew who did what. So, but fast forward to later, we are now in the big city in Johannesburg. We live and work in Africa's financial capital. We need blockchain badly in order to lower the barriers and actually create a see-through effect, because we don't know where our tomatoes come from, and they clearly don't come from the local supermarket. So we just need to go back to our village upbringing, but leveraging tech in order to know who does what, because the middlemen in between, they have created a bit of murky and opaque realities, because they didn't want us to find out where things come from for their own interests. But it's high time that we change that, and we're in motion.
Fantastic. And you have my support if I can do it.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you kindly.
It's really interesting. You're talking about this broker relationship that exists in Africa. I think it's really unique because it's not something that we really deal with too much here in the States. Really, I mean, a lot of commerce is really, direct to consumer. Sure, in some cases there's brokers, but I think a lot of people outside of Africa are unfamiliar with this dynamic. And you think that blockchain can fix that and bring it more direct connections, instead of, oh, we got to go through this person and then hopefully it gets to the end. So, and that should result in less inequality, right? More wealth on both sides of the equation, right?
Definitely. Talking about the global norm versus the African reality, I'm going to single out one item: coffee beans. Okay. The coffee trade globally is not going through its best season in terms of how farmers are treated and in terms of what ends up in their pocket globally. But in Africa, it's even more incredibly interesting, because if you are sipping on coffee right now instead of water, I would actually argue that if you sourced it from one of the local restaurants, you would have paid $4 to $5 for it, just on a minimal side. How much does an African farmer get out of that transaction? They would get less than 1 cent. They'll get less than 1 cent per cup. That's one. Number two, let me address the power brokers, the global norm to the African average. The coffee belt of Africa is on the east, your Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and others. But here's what's interesting. We did an analysis as a Coronet team, and we found that there's usually around 4 middlemen in Colombia and other coffee hubs between the farm and the sheep. There's usually 4. In Africa, there's a minimum 12. In Africa, there's a minimum 12 middlemen. I just thought I could lean forward and attach some numbers to the African reality as per your words.
12 middlemen on average.
On a good day, there's 12 middlemen.
Unbelievable. See, now that is a serious problem. And so how long will it take for blockchain penetration to help fix that problem? What else needs to happen?
Very, very good question. I'm going to allow Pretty to lean forward to outline our macro picture in terms of blockchain penetration or adoption, particularly with the 717 Saturdays that we have on our grid. But I'll allow her to do that, and then I'm going to show you our philosophy that has proven to work in terms of not just implementing or racing for adoption, but practicalizing blockchain. So I will allow her to kind of like mention the bigger picture, and I'm going to lean forward on that.
Perfect.
Definitely. So I'm just going to touch on 2 aspects. The first one is that blockchain, when we began building Coronet, for example, we're speaking with a number of players that are running a big chain of retail within the hair industry, wanting to bring them on board to belong to our ecosystem. So they used to see the blockchain technology as it's a tool that we could add, but we can actually do business without it. And then came the pandemic. 80% of their employees were not registered, so they couldn't get any unemployment insurance from the government, even though there was more than 50 billion that was put on the side for that. They themselves could not get any financial support because even though they've been trading for many years and they've been bringing like 7 figures, they couldn't prove that income because it was usually cash. Their inventory is not traceable. They don't have any business insurance. And now that we are bringing those conversations, it has moved from a nice to have as to a necessity. Africa doesn't need to be pitched and sold blockchain because it's like the writing is on the wall. It's not a privilege for us. It's not a nice thing we think we should be doing. It's something that we have to do because democratization of real value is what has been missing. We are one of the most unequal economies in the world based on the lack of a digital infrastructure like the blockchain technology. The second aspect to that is really, really driving the questions that the blockchain technology comes to answer is the consumer base. The emerging consumer base in Africa, because now we have become a part of the global community because of access to internet and having to be able to compare notes. Today, I could say I bought, like literally those things, they happen. I bought this unit of hair from Africa, but the quality is like 60% less than the one that my friend Anna in the UK bought, but I paid actually twice than she paid. Those things, we can do them today. So the consumers are driving the question about the how, the why, the how much, under what circumstances. So because consumers are the star of the show in any supply chain, they always have to drive these questions. But today we've got platforms where we can express that. So the adoption of the blockchain technology in consumables, the consumer market is driving all these questions that the blockchain comes to answer.
So how do you deal? I mean, surely you'll have some resistance, right? Because you're changing how business is done. You're changing, you know, the responsibilities of all these middlemen and stuff like that. I mean, how do you deal with resistance that's coming? So, I mean, farmers would be leaping for joy and the consumers would be, oh yeah, we're really happy. But what about all the kerfuffle in the middle? What happens? How do you deal with that?
That's a very good question. And I think that's where the team, they asked me to lean forward now and then and take a couple of arrows as the born diplomat. That's why I had to be born a diplomat many months ago. So with that being said, you know,
take a few arrows.
So, you know, we interact with our global peers now and then. Like in a week time, we've got a meeting with one of our team of experts that is based in New York. So one of the things that we keep repeating about Africa is that Africa is not only home to 3,000 different languages and even more than twice the number of ethnic groups and tribes, but Africa is also obsessed with having unwritten rules and invisible power centers. So there's quite a number of power dynamics and power brokerage that you have to, and I'm not referring to political.
You need armor. You need more than, you need to protect yourself, my friend.
There we go. And what's interesting is that Africa's obsession with power and power dynamics and power centers is not something that is exclusively political or exclusively policy or regulation. Even on the home front, I'm going to give you an example.
Thing as well, right?
There is a tribal mindset. Yeah. I'll use an example. In the villages of the Eastern Cape, parts of South Africa, there's still something called ukutwalwa. Ukutwalwa means a woman. Ukutwalwa means a woman.
Like it's a licensed human trafficking.
Yeah,
like you traffic a woman who's going to a river and make her your wife.
You kidnap her and marry her off to the next highest bidder, and that is culturally okay. And that has been decided by the elders in the village. The men have vetted this thing. The power brokers are happy with it. By the way, they'll be eating meat. They're going to be dining and feasting. And while she goes like, how did I get here? Can somebody get me out of here? So I'm just showing you how power and power dynamics are even at a village level. Now, when you get to a level where you've got to navigate regulators, you've got to navigate a 200-year-old banking framework that has been perpetuating financial exclusion rather than inclusion, and you're also navigating other dynamics where the power brokers or the middlemen are not going to give up their monopoly lying down. They're going to try and fight. But as Preeti said, leaning forward to very tactically steer the dynamics whereby the consumer awareness gets to drive the demand and insist on ethical wine because
there's more consumers than people who are driving for power. So you're
definitely,
basically
and
having a
consumers
platform.
can fire everyone.
Yeah,
yes,
and you
the
have a
consumer
platform.
can fire everybody.
Exactly. And you now have a platform where people take control. They take control back, right?
Absolutely. So, and the second neutralizer is that within our realm of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, we often acknowledge that globally and in Africa, there's 5 generations that are working in the marketplace today. So they speak different languages, your millennials, your Generation X, your born frees and all this. So because that's a reality, we have taken a different stance in blockchain. When we lean forward to commandeer adoption, we often kind of like play more a diplomat role to get all these generations to play nicely with each other. I'm going to give you an example. The average African president or head of state is, the youngest is just 45. That's the youngest. And the average is between 60 to 80. So meaning you've got people that are commandeering things in the cockpit of politically speaking, and you've got a majority of the youth. We are among the youngest continents in the world. And those are the future leaders. And those are agitated to want to see change. Those are the millennials. So you've got all this, you've got these polarized realities. So how we commandeer it, whereby we put truth, transparency, and traceability at the center is we don't pitch the generations against each other. We go like, can we play nicely with each other? Yeah. Can we broker
Here's the diplomat.
Win? There we go. That's balancing the stakeholders. That's balancing the stakeholders.
The statement,
I love it.
Power to the people comes to mind here. I like it.
Yeah.
Love that. Thank you.
So I hate to cut us off so soon. I feel like there's still so much more we could talk about. We're going to have to do another session.
Absolutely.
We're going to have to do another session together. Yeah. Are you guys?
We'd love that.
I can see, I just want to kind of leave with this before we go, but what I can see from talking to you is that while blockchain is this cool topic in other countries like the US, it's a necessity for the future of places like Africa.
Absolutely.
And that's something that now it makes sense why I see so many people, so many entrepreneurs in Africa working on blockchain. That's their focus. So much innovation in blockchain coming out of Africa. It makes more sense to me now. And I really appreciate that. And I think that our viewers will understand that a lot better now, that like, hey, actually this may be just a cool topic for you, or you guys are investing in Bitcoin and, oh, cool, I made some money. No, for Africa, this is infrastructural level change. And I'm so grateful to have learned this from you today.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking forward to talking more about it in the future. So let's
love that. Thank you.
Guys, phenomenal.
Seriously, this was a great session. I loved it. So with that, though, we are out of time. So I want to thank Shadrack and Preeti, both of you, so much. Thank you for your time and for educating me and for educating Medea. And Medea, as always, a wonderful co-host. I love it.
She's amazing. She's stunning.
I'm truly blessed here. I just show up and I do the intro and I leave pretty much.
Look at this, man. Thank you so much, Jason.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thanks for all of our viewers as well. We'll see you next time. Shadrack and Preeti, thank you. And we'll see you again very soon.
Thank you so much. To be continued.
Bye.
To be
Cheers.
continued.
To be continued. All right.
Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you so much.
Have a good one. Have a wonderful Easter weekend. So
You too. You too. Take care.
Have a brilliant one. Thank you so much to you both. Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.